Hi, all. Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show that takes you behind palace gates like never before. This is where tradition meets truth and nothing is off limits. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines. Grant, I haven't had you in a long time. I'm so glad you're back. Grant Harrold, aka the Royal Butler. You can learn everything that you could possibly imagine about etiquette if you follow Grant on social media. So you have to do that. Grant is the former butler to King Charles III and royal commentator and PR guru. He gives me all the insight as to why Meghan Markle might be making some of the odd strategies that she's been making over the last few weeks. That's Richard Fitzwilliams. I'm so grateful to have both of you here. Let's start with some happy news. I have been thrilled to see a lot more of King Charles and Queen Camilla. It's their 20th wedding anniversary. We had a secret meeting with the Pope that none of us were anticipating. I'd just been doing media about how this meeting was going to be postponed due to the Pope's illness, and then we got this beautiful photo. But Grant, you were around for a lot of the chaos surrounding Queen Camilla, and we've seen this public image have a remarkable transformation over the decades. She was at one point one of the most, I think, polarizing figures in royal history. And now we've seen that she's become such a valuable asset to the family. Can you talk to me about her evolution? And don't, if you feel compelled to, please also discuss how she could have helped Meghan Markle navigate some of the chaos, considering what she's actually been through herself.
Well, first, I've got to say, I can't believe it's 20 years. In fact, it's really scary. I mean, I was actually at the wedding. They both personally invited me, and it was a bit unusual being invited because I'd only been there for 9 months. And I remember getting this phone call from one of the secretaries in the office to inform me that the now king and queen were personally inviting me under friends and family because I wasn't able to go as a staff member, which is pretty cool. I
Yeah.
was quite I remember kind of being very excited about it.
Did you see
But
Joan
you,
Rivers there?
yeah, oh yeah. But I could tell you a really funny story about Joan Rivers actually. I'll come back to that, but
Okay.
remind me to tell you about Joan Rivers. I've got a very funny story about Joan. But it was an amazing occasion, and a lot of people kind of say to me, "Is it like what they saw in The Crown?" And to a degree, yes, it was. I mean, the Queen did do a very funny speech. Indeed, it was about the fact that she was missing the race and to be at the wedding. It was a wonderful occasion. The highlight for me was one of the butlers that served me my glass of champagne was my brother, who was also working for the Queen at the time. So it was an amazing occasion. But the point is, it doesn't seem like 20 years. And as you pointed out, I remember very well, as I'm sure Richard does as well, that it was an interesting time because there was a very strong feelings. I mean, we've got to remember the late Diana, Princess of Wales, had only been dead for a short amount of time at this period, and emotions were very still, and feelings were very strong among the British people. And I wouldn't have said that it was. I think they accepted it, but I wouldn't have said there was a huge joy and celebration as, certainly from his marriage to Princess Diana. But on saying that, I did notice a change. I certainly noticed a change over the years that I was there. I remember, in particular, a lady coming up to me. Who was a local lady actually, who absolutely had very strong feelings, and she told me that her feelings were changing based on what she was saying, seeing what the then Duchess was doing, and equally that's continued, and more so with the King's cancer diagnosis and seeing Queen Camilla stepping into a quite a significant role to support him and undertaking so many duties in his behalf. At one point it was mainly kind of her and Prince William, because obviously with the partners going through this cancer journey, and to see the two of them kind of at the forefront was extraordinary, and it's definitely changed people's opinions. At this moment in time, I'm actually on a if I can say, I'm actually on a cruise ship. I'm giving talks to, thousands of people, and the overall feeling and discussion from speaking to so many people is that even those that didn't like her originally, the agreement's very much unanimous that I'm not saying that they suddenly love her, but they're now respecting her and they see her as a valued member of the family. So it shows you in 20 years how time is a healer, and opinions definitely change.
Absolutely. No. Richard, well, first of all, tell me about Joan Rivers, and then I'm going to ask Richard almost the most, the very similar question.
It's a rather embarrassing story. I was at a dinner with the now King and Queen, and there was a lady sitting next to the King, and the King was asking me about my family, which she used to kind of always ask about my mother and my father and my brother and different things. And the lady next to him had the questions, so she started asking me about my background and about being Scottish, and she was trying to mimic my accent, and she was very funny. And I remember asking her later on after the dinner. I asked her what her role was within the royal household, and she said, "I'm not in the royal. Why do you think I'm in the royal household?" And I said, "Well, there was a few secretaries at the table, and I assumed she was one of the secretaries." And I remember she said, "No, I'm not a secretary. I'm a." She was very puzzled, and she said, "I'm an entertainer." So I said, What, like Butlins?" And she said, "No, not Butlins." And she's an American, obviously American lady, "Not Butlins." She said, "No, no, no, I do television." And then later on, she came up to me and she said, "You're a very interesting young chap and you're going to go far, I can tell," kind of thing. And then she kind of wandered off. And I remember this other butler saying, "Isn't it wonderful? We've got Joan Rivers here this evening." So I can confirm Joan Rivers didn't work at Butlins. And I got to meet her on many occasions, and she was absolutely great. She would never let me forget that one time when thought she was either a member of the royal household or an entertainer at Butlins. But she was lovely, and she had an amazing, as you probably know, she had an amazing, amazing sense of humor. She was great fun.
Oh, I love hearing that. Richard, did you ever meet Joan Rivers?
No, I've never had that pleasure. I gather she has a sharp wit, they say.
She does, yes. Well, why don't you talk to me about Queen Camilla's evolution? And do you feel at all that watching the sacrifices she made? I mean, one quote she said over the week was, "Laughter, friendship, and simply getting on with life is the secret to 20 years of wedded bliss with King Charles." And when I read that, I thought, that's just great advice in general when it comes to being a working member of the British royal family. Could if had an open heart, could Queen Camilla have guided her through what Meghan said was a really difficult period? Because we see that you can come out on the other side. In an example of Queen Camilla, she has converted a lot of people. A lot of people do love her today, and she's got all of these really interesting causes, like all of these the reading podcast, domestic violence. I mean, she truly has made a path for herself, and she is a very valuable asset to the family. And in working hard and just doing it, it seems like she has converted not only the British public, but perhaps Prince William too.
It's firstly just to touch on Grant's point regarding the perception of Queen Camilla. Of course, it is quite extraordinary looking back 20 years, and you had, I mean, a whole generation and more has grown up who haven't known Diana for obvious reasons, and things have changed so tremendously. Do you remember the way we commemorated, say, 10 years after Diana's death and so forth? And there was very much a shadow, I think, over how also this business, which was always a fiction of becoming or one day becoming Princess Consort. I think one of the pivotal moment, I think, was when it was made absolutely clear that the Queen approved of her being Queen, and that well, Queen Consort, and that literally was accepted by pretty well everyone. I think you're all absolutely right. I think it's the way she's handled things. I mean, the keep calm and carry on aspect of it that the Queen used so successfully. I think she's adapted aspects of that to suit her own personality because obviously things have changed, but equally her background is very aristocratic, quintessentially so, and also, of course, she's got this amazing roller coaster relationship. I mean, going back to 1970 with the then Prince of Wales, it's quite extraordinary, and obviously links that involve a similar sense of humor, similar attitudes, similar friendship, similar friends. All of this, I think, is part and parcel of what is indeed the marriage of true minds, as Shakespeare would say, and tested, as Grant was saying, so tremendously in this last period because the pressures she must be working under, and also with royal events, of course, the whole idea that you had so long to plan beforehand, and now that that is frequently or could be frequently upset, and the fact also that that the king is undergoing treatment for cancer, and it has, as we saw recently, side effects. And there are tremendous geopolitical stresses too, because I mean, given the fact, say, he's not only a workaholic, I think it's her big challenge, because if one looks at what possibly caused that health glitch, 372 engagements last year of the king, and that he was only able to undertake them on doctor's orders since April. 43 of them were abroad, of course, the trip to Australia and Samoa at the Commonwealth Conference. Then that's phenomenal. It does verge unquestionably on overdoing it a lot. And I think I suspect that's quite a challenge for her, because he's got his red boxes and duties and so forth. And of course, he's using or trying to use the royal engagements he undertakes as Philip, because he loves being with people so obviously, but it must be extremely stressful, especially in private hours when you're balancing treatment, its effects, what someone can do, and also how you get on with them generally, because there's the other aspect of their relationship that's had quite a lot of publicity, and that is the fact that he can go to Highgrove and she can go to Raymill, and they can both have some space and it helps to balance things, because it must be very, very stressful. And we know she isn't particularly keen on traveling and so on. And these tours, I mean, the one they've just done with, I think, 19 engagements for 4 days, it must be quite memorably stressful at times, but she, of course, has terrific resilience, and she's shown this over the years. And thinking back further, one remembers the 1990s, well, say no more. So I think it is a remarkable partnership. Meghan, what she could have, I do think, regarding your question about Meghan, I think they were very, very different characters. She might very well have given advice, but I see them as such conflicted individuals when it came to having anything in common, that I do wonder whether that could have worked.
One wants a life of service, the other wants a life in the spotlight, very much so. Grant, does it surprise you that we saw a super secret meeting with King Charles and the Pope? I was pleasantly surprised by it, but at the same time, it does seem to me like that would be something important for the king to try to make happen, because we know how spiritual he is. We know he'd been sending handwritten notes to the Pope about his health, saying he wished that, he'd wished him well. So it was nice to actually see that come to fruition after reports that it had been postponed.
You're absolutely right. The king is very spiritual. When it comes to religion. And I'm sure you remember, even at the time of the coronation, there was a query over being defended the kind of faith, which faith, because he respects and, very much respects and admires all faiths and religions. And the Pope has certainly become a friend over the years, as has previous popes he's got to know. Like you said, obviously there was the announcement that the Pope wasn't going to see the king, and I think the Vatican were probably playing it safe, because at that point, and they've even admitted he was so ill, they didn't know if he would even survive. So of course, I'm sure at the time the advice the king was given that possibly, and thankfully that didn't happen, but if his condition deteriorated, then obviously it wouldn't be possible. And obviously as the Pope, thankfully his health's increased, and obviously he's slowly getting better. It doesn't surprise me that the king would have still wanted to have seen it. I'm sure the request would have still been put forward, saying that the king would like to have had a private audience. And I think the other thing that's interesting is that I think the meeting would have still within reason, I think it would have still gone ahead. I think, but behind closed doors and probably privately, the fact they've made it public and issued the photo is very much the Pope's obviously decided, would have given permission, or the Vatican gave permission for that image also to be released to show this private meeting. Because I think what sometimes people forget is that yes, we get to see a lot of what the King and Queen do in public, but again, I'm sure Richard would say as well, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you don't get to see, that we don't get to see. And quite simply, because some of those audiences and meetings are private for many reasons, including health reasons as well. So, but I've no doubt the King and the Queen would have been over the moon that they were able to see him and spend some time with him. And that photograph is quite a sweet photograph actually, because you can see they're obviously beaming at the fact they got to spend time with him. And I'm sure the Pope would have enjoyed the visit as well. But again, it just shows you, isn't it? It's interesting how the wonderful thing about the King and Queen is it's irrelevant who they meet or who they see, whether it be world leaders or a couple at the end of the street. They always seem to kind of lift everyone's spirits, if I can say that. Something that the late Queen always did. I mean, gosh, she always did that. She always had this wonderful way about making people kind of sense that, when she'd visit hospitals and hospitals and things, she'd have this thing about suddenly it would give people this excitement. And that's something that they seem to, they kind of generate, they kind of give off. So what I'm trying to say, and I'm sure for the Pope, he probably enjoyed the visit. Hopefully it's given him a bit of a boost. And I'm sure they would have, I'm sure they'll be hoping that they get to see him again in the near future when he's hopefully a lot more I want to say mobile and back to himself if things go well for him.
I also wonder if the permission to share the photo was in some way a gentle strategy to give confidence to the Pope healing and the
Mm,
Pope getting a little
mm.
bit better, because we did have the surprise appearance by him last weekend as well. So I wonder if they're just gently trying to comfort the public with these little moments where you do see him, he's out there. And because I noticed he
Mm.
wasn't wearing the oxygen around the nose like he was over the weekend. Wait, Brent, I have to ask you, this is a very tacky question. I read that they exchanged gifts. I would love to receive a gift from King Charles if he's watching. I can't imagine what that's like. What kind of gift exchanges did you see? When we read that they exchanged gifts, like in your mind, what are you thinking? Is it a hand painted picture from King Charles? I mean, what could it be?
I remember, when I worked there, the gifts exchanges are a big part of what the royal family and other world leaders do for each other. Um, I think the kind of gift giving is very much become part of the kind of one of the kind of duties that they perform, if you like, for each other. So as you mentioned, that obviously something would have been given to the Pope. The Pope would have given something in return. It's difficult to say what those gifts might be. I'm kind of imagining, it could have been, from the Pope's point of view, I'm sure it would have been something obviously religious. Maybe an icon or something, which would make sense because the king, it's something that he enjoys, and that he's got a few of those already. Um, as far as what the king would give the Pope, it's difficult to say. As you mentioned, he's obviously a very accomplished artist. He does his wonderful paintings, which suddenly have become extremely valuable, obviously, especially his lithographs. But as far as the gift giving, I also remember things as simple as beautiful handcuffs,
Oh,
beautiful cufflinks, not. I don't, I don't think they give out handcuffs these days. Okay, I think Mitch will confirm that is not true. Not handcuffs. I'm cuffing. They give out cuffings or similar things to that. I'm gonna compose myself now.
this is
But yeah, they'll
definitely
give.
royally unfiltered.
Yeah, I think the days of the handcuffs hopefully have long gone.
Wonderful.
Um,
It's a
yeah.
unique way. It's a truly unique gift.
Yeah, exactly.
Richard can tell what I was given when I was there. But no, the cufflinks or sometimes pottery or
Mm.
something from his, from the foundation, because obviously got the Royal Foundation where there's a lot of people kind of create different things. So it'll be something that'd be personal, I'm sure. But just to clarify, definitely not handcuffs.
I love that. I love that clarification. Richard, can you tell me about Aston Villa and these great pictures of Prince William and Prince George at this game? I loved the video of Prince William scooping Prince George up in this adorable bear hug. And you can just tell they are both so thrilled. How, I mean, to me, this is fun to see because we didn't have this type enthusiasm, and it's not an insult. It just is not something that King Charles was interested in the same way the Queen was interested in horse racing. It is fun to see this kind of enthusiasm from the royal family, that real sincerity and authenticity, and affection. I mean, just the affection was where I was like melting. And Prince William openly talking about how he was so happy to be there with his son. He was going to be on his best behavior to the media, which I thought was cute. And then also, I have a weird question I'm hoping you can answer for me about this. With Prince William in Paris and King Charles in Italy, technically, who is it? Because I hate that Prince Harry's over there, is what I'm trying to say. Is Prince Harry, does he have any sort of authority right now with Prince William in Paris and King Charles in Italy? And then talk to me a little bit about seeing Prince William so authentic, cheering on his favorite team.
Well, firstly, I mean, you've raised what was in Queen Elizabeth's last years a very serious point that concerned a lot of people, because there was an occasion when the then Prince of Wales and Prince William were out of the country. And it was wondered precisely what might happen if or should the need arise, because councillors of state, there was Andrew and there was Harry, as my memory serves me correctly. And subsequently, that has been boosted. One of the first acts of King Charles, the new reign, I mean, it was very important because the councillors of state, the spouse, and of course the Duke of Edinburgh, was no longer with us, as the spouse of the monarch and the next four in line to the throne. Now, that includes, of course, Andrew, who's not carrying out any royal duties, nor will he be, and also, of course, Harry, but it is important that they be domiciled in the United Kingdom. Now, that should, in theory anyway, rule out Harry, though he's not an American citizen. He's talked about being one, but he's living else abroad. So no one particularly wants to revisit this or to visit this, because it wouldn't be for the monarch to remove Andrew or Harry. It would be parliamentary. And the moment that opens up, you never know where it could go. Mm-hmm. So what in fact has happened is that Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and also Beatrice, it's unlikely that she'd be called on, but I mean, this at least means that there are three who could take on the roles, and they would, in theory, be in charge, as in the circumstance you mentioned, which it's very important because this was a gap that was concerning quite a few people regarding. In Queen Elizabeth's reign in the last period, regarding the joyous scenes with William and George, it's wonderful also to see royals relaxing and being so joyous. It's true, you were right. I mean, it isn't Prince Charles of the King's way, and when he was Prince of Wales, I mean, he was rather shy and introverted. But the Queen, I was at Ascot in 2013, and Esther had won the Gold Cup. The Queen had never previously won the Gold Cup, and the scenes which were filmed in the Royal Box when she was with her trainer were absolutely marvellous. You actually could see she was really animated. I mean, this was there, Esther coming in, and I mean, they were famous. The Queen Mother also occasionally showed enthusiasm in that way. But here you had you had William who's adopted at Villa. I mean, he chose them apparently because they constantly go up and down, and Manchester United or Chelsea, too well established. It was, I just looked it up as to precisely why, and he wanted something that would give a bit of emotion, and that's what we saw. And the fact that George is joining in with such terrific spirit, and the lovely shots of them. It also means it makes the monarchy more approachable. It just simply, this sort of thing just simply wasn't Charles's style. And, it isn't. Don't do it. You couldn't imagine the Duke of Edinburgh in quite the same way because it's a different era. As I say, the Queen is terrific when it became Queen Elizabeth, when it came to horse racing. But yes, Harry and William, of course, it's almost a rite of passage of the royal, it seems, to be keen on polo, but it's an elitist sport, as the Sussexes were told before they made a film for Netflix about it, or docuseries, and took no notice. But there is this keenness for sport of the royals. Polo does feature a lot, but people don't relate to that. They love and will love the fact that, they were in Paris. All right, Paris Saint-Germain won 3-1, but there was the enthusiasm, there was the backing, and it does remind one, of course, of a cautionary, and I'm sure William will have taken this on board when the Lionesses were playing in the Antipodes, and it was a member of the Spanish royal family, I think it was Queen Letizia was there, and no representative from us. So that I always thought was a mistake.
Well, now I look back on that and I wonder if anything was going on health-wise that we didn't know about, because it did feel like shortly after that, we started to see kind of the unraveling of everything. So I think I'm going to be careful going forward to jump on it, like when Prince William didn't show up to his godfather's funeral. I'm going to pump the brakes going forward when it comes to commentary about them not being someplace we expect them to be. I've learned my lesson, is what I'm trying to say. Grant, I have to ask you, you're on this cruise ship, you're giving speeches about royalty, and I know that people are giving you their unsolicited opinions, and I love that even more. What are people saying to you about Meghan Markle's new podcast? We know that it debuted on Apple Podcast charts at number 6 in both the US and in Canada, 11th in the UK, 22nd in Ireland, and 57th in Australia. Are you getting a sense that people are still engaged when it comes to the Sussexes' entertainment pursuits? Or are they kind of overwhelmed by back-to-back reality show on Netflix? Here comes season 2. Here's my lifestyle website drop. By the way, my podcast is now streaming.
It's interesting, actually. If I can say, I'm actually on Cunard ships. I'm actually an ambassador with them, and I'm one of the speakers. And as you know, Cunard's got a very close relationship with the royal family. The late Queen was a godmother. The Queen Camilla is a godmother. Historically, they've had this close relationship, and people that come on these ships are very much royal lovers, enthusiasts. People that respect the monarchy, they like the relationship between the ships and the royal family, and they're also very supportive of the royal family. And it's extraordinary because you get all these wonderful people come along to kind of listen to some of my memories, and the feedback that they kind of they do come up and obviously speak to me about what's going on within the royal family. And the majority, not everybody, I must admit, I can't say it's everybody, but the majority have got very strong feelings when it comes to Meghan and Harry. And the feeling is that they feel let down by Harry. They feel that it's not the Harry that they feel that they got to know over setting over the last couple of decades. And they feel their feelings are very strong when it comes to Meghan. They feel, which is their feelings. It's not obviously what I've kind of said to them. They're saying that they feel that she has changed him, that that they feel that she's somehow damaged the monarchy, that it's changed it, and they're very vocal about this. And trust me, they're not They're not shy coming forward and expressing that. There is one or two that will come up and say they feel sorry for her and they feel that she's gone through a tough time. Which equally, she has gone through a tough time, whether you love or hate her. It has been a tough time for her. So there's a lot of very strong emotions, and I always kind of say that we don't really know what's going on. It's difficult to kind of judge, but we build up a picture. We look at what's going on, and I think as we would all agree, there's certainly. Even I'll admit there's something certainly not right because I remember how close the two brothers were and how close he was to his father, and a lot of what's been said and done just doesn't, to me, it absolutely doesn't make sense. There's definitely something going on, but I'm always very, kind of cautious because I think, working for the royal family and getting to know them and individually and getting to the work, of course, there's something not right, but at the same time, you don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't really know what's taking place or what's happened. But I listen to what they say, and the feelings are very strong. And unfortunately, the majority have no wish to see Harry have anything to do with the royal family going forward. And as far as the shows and the present podcast goes, I don't think they have any interest in listening to it. But they've obviously got supporters. There must be people that do enjoy them and enjoy listening to them. So, but the majority of the people that I'm speaking to, as I say, have got this very strong, very, very strong opinion, but I always kind of say that I do stress that. I listen to them and I agree with them, but I say you've just got to remember that we don't really know what is going on, and we are quick to judge, but we've got to kind of remember that what's going on in Bengals is we don't know. We don't know what's taking place. And even though I'm not disagreeing with them, that it always very odd. And of course I see a change in him. 100%. That's not the Harry that I knew. There's no two ways about that at all. So something's changed, something's happened. But as I said, it's a very difficult one. But the overall feeling is very much unanimous as to how people feel. And as I said, they're not scared of saying it. And I've even had Canadians and Americans come up and apologize and saying, we're so sorry for Meghan." I'm saying it's not a case. It's not. I said, there's no point in apology. You can't apologize for someone else if they've done right or wrong. It's that's not how it should be. But it's quite interesting. It's very interesting. So, but the people that come here are very much supporters of the Crown, the supporters of the King, and Queen Camilla. And I should also quickly mention, interestingly, some of the feedback I had recently, which was very sweet. I had a few guests come up to me, and they would going back to what we were saying earlier about Queen Camilla, they would very much voice how much they didn't like her, how much they disliked her. But listening to my talks and my insights, they've actually said they've changed their opinion, and they
Nice.
now think they're not saying they're royalists now, but they say they now admire what she's doing and they now respect her. And I remember one lady in particular who was an absolute um, opposite of opposite of supporting the monarchy, Republican without any question, and certainly absolutely hated Queen. She said it has completely changed her opinion. She said, "I'm not a royalist, but she said, it has made me respect them and kind of glad that we've actually got them, including and Queen Camilla." So I'm hopefully making a tiny
Gent.
change and impact as I go as I'm sailing the seven seas.
I love that. You're a multitasker, and that's what I love about you. I also loved that thoroughly politically correct answer. You could definitely run for president in the United States of America because that was nice and clean. Nothing salacious there. Richard Fitzwilliams, when we talk about, that was a very Canadian about that I just said. When we talk about Meghan Markle's brand, now she has dropped the Sussex titles. She's dropped even the last name Sussex from the podcast. But listening to her new podcast, Confessions of a Female Founder, I wonder if she has, I wonder if she has pinpointed the audience that is engaged with her and if she's catering to it. Because I don't necessarily feel like she is doing that. I feel like she's trying to impress a group of people, the cool kids lunch table that she wants to sit at. But if you know that you have an audience that already exists and you can look at those demographics, why not craft content around the type of information they want to hear? And to give her props for a second, I'd almost say that's more in line with Love Meghan than as ever, or Confessions of a Female Founder, which is talking to girlfriends about entrepreneurship, which was less about entrepreneurship and more about Meghan's personal life, whatever. Don't get me started. But does it feel like she's all over the place?
I wonder whether this question we could answer more accurately, say in 3 months' time or whatever, when the dust has settled from all of these, you turn your head and she's up to something. I mean, I couldn't hear. I mean, I must say I was not particularly taken, and I don't think most people were who've listened to it critically with her First Confessions podcast. I think her fans probably would enjoy anything that she did because she doesn't give insight, but what she does want is praise. And what interests me, and it did in the first cookery series, was the way that the guest had to spend quite a while and indeed return to the topic of how wonderful she was in some way or another. Because I mean, if you have a halo and then you put another halo around it and then a third one, it can get very dull. And I mean, like co-founder of Bumble, and I mean, she's done extremely well, but they didn't get under. I mean, had there been in that podcast one disagreement, something that was lively, something to wake me up, something to really. I mean, I realized that she's had problems after giving birth that we didn't know about, and there's that made the headlines, and that it was intended to, of course. I mean,
I'm always uncomfortable when she does this, though, because I've been told to respect your privacy. So I don't want to talk about your health issues. I refuse to engage in that conversation because you and Harry have made it perfectly clear that that's none of my business. It's this really weird mismessaging, our contradiction, where like our hands are slapped because we're getting too close. Our hands are slapped because we're asking things that, that we're not supposed to know, or that's none of our business. And then Meghan is like, stay away from our kids. By the way, here's a picture of Lily. It's this constant. I mean, it's probably what Grant's going through right now on that cruise ship. I just feel up and down, up and down. And when she tries to talk to me about her health, I'm like, I'm not even going to go there because you've made it perfectly clear that you want a private life. And I'm not supposed to ask those types of questions. So I'm not going to engage in that discussion.
I think that I wish South Park had returned to the premise because I heard that they were going to, and this was rather expected. But there's no doubt that they wanted both ways. Obviously, it's her Lemonada Media, which I mean, it's certainly not Spotify. On the other hand, I mean, one must mention this. There's no question that Spotify did give her an endorsement, and I think she would have been very pleased with that. What they've got, which is obviously, we'll see how this plays out later in the year, but to have Ted Sarandos at least make pleasant comments about you and notice you, and then the Spotify at least gave a nod. I mean, after the grifters comment by an executive, that was pretty brutal, and whereas in my opinion, given the way they behaved, they deserved it. That's just my opinion, and I think that will have shocked them deeply. So they've managed to pick up some slack from all this. I mean, we've got the second cookery series to endure, and then of course we've also got. Don't let's forget the sold out, in inverted commas, as ever products.
Yeah, sold out, but here's an email saying, I'm sorry, I don't actually have the product you purchased. So that it looks like everything ran real smoothly, gentlemen. Now, Grant, can I ask you about Richard Kay's piece in the Daily Mail that I found incredibly compelling? And I know that Prince Harry can't determine when the court decides to revisit his appeal. But I do think that Richard Kay makes a really strong point that Prince Harry does know protocol, and he does know that his father's been ill. This is the first big state visit in 2025, and him coming over and having a presence in court, which was not required, would distract from crucial headlines that the king and his team were hoping to generate around his visit. And I've talked about it a couple of times on this podcast, the importance of state visits and how there's a lot of diplomacy that goes on behind the scenes, and that it's a lot about creating relationships that are critical for these countries. Do you think that Richard Kay, who was a friend to Princess Diana, so I do always take his criticism of Prince Harry pretty seriously, because I feel like, he knew Diana's personality enough to know whether she would engage in something similar. Do you think that his criticism is harsh, or do you think that Prince Harry, in a way, is being disrespectful towards his father to come out at this time and sit in court? There was a big scene where he was rushed out of court because a supporter screamed at the media in his defense, "I support you, Prince Harry. He left because of you." I'd like to know your opinion there.
I think Rich what he's doing is obviously making a very clear observation, which is what a lot of people might feel and think about. And as you mentioned, state visits, the big events. I mean, they're planned months in advance because it's the government that organise it, and and then obviously on the King's behalf they accept the state visit, and then obviously whether it's be within the country or whether it's overseas. And I think also for the King, with his health and everything, it's probably even more so an important visit for him, because as he hasn't been well, especially in recent weeks, there was the question of whether he would undertake it, and he has. And I remember from my time in the royal household that things were done, there was protocols that nothing should overshadow certain events or occasions. So other royals wouldn't do something that could clash which they wouldn't do anyway, because, the point of the royal family, the monarchy, is it works together. Well, that's what it's supposed to do. Harry, as you said, if there was no real need for him to come over, but he did come over to make a point and to be seen, and he's a winning state visit. I think we're in a point now, and I might be wrong. It might be a case of now where Harry possibly doesn't really have any kind of feeling about that. Maybe he's very much thinking about himself and his family, and he's not thinking so much about the state visit, which is very sad if that is the state of play, but it is possible that's what's happening. And because it's making a big statement, I mean, I'm, all the way over in the other side of the world, and I heard about it. I was getting all the news flashes saying what was going on and everything, and in fairness, I'm getting more news flashes about that than I was getting about the King's visit. Which kind of shows it has overshadowed it slightly. Hasn't completely, but it certainly has generated a lot of discussion. And when it comes to the PR and everything of the royal family, obviously they're going to be wanting to make sure that this visit, for example, today with the Pope, they want to make sure that's very much, which is why we saw those pictures. It's highlighted the importance of this visit, and usually the visits are highly important for the relations between two countries and their peoples. So what Harry has done has certainly overshadowed it, and that hasn't been intentionally done. What if he knew the visit was going on and he was aware that there was going to be media, and that it could, of course, he'd be aware. I mean, he knows the royal family. He's part of it, so he knows exactly what that would mean. But again, it's quite sad if that is the kind of game, if that is what's kind of happening, and that he doesn't actually, he's got to a point where he thinks, well, I don't care. But then that also signals, I think, as Richard might agree, I think that signals that possibly the relations between the father and son and the two brothers is not any better than it was, say, this time last year. Obviously, then it's not, which I wanted to think that it was improving and getting better, but maybe it's not improving. I think the thing about me is I'm one of those kind of characters who I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to go on. And because when I worked there, it was a United family. Everyone got on. Everyone, they were a very close family. And it does sadden me to know that that's no longer the case. And I would like, and I know it's it's a wish list, and it's never going to be the same, but I'd like to see the family united again in some shape or form. But as time goes on, it's becoming clear that maybe that's not going to happen. And I actually mentioned today, I was drawing comparisons talking about Edward the Eighth, and obviously when he married Wallis Simpson and how extraordinary. And again, Richard will probably know the dates better than me on this one, but I think it was 70 years or so since the abdication crisis. And isn't it extraordinary? 70 years on, you've got again a second son of a monarch that's married the woman that he loved, who is of a different religion, divorcee, has caused a fallout within the royal family, and
An
of course,
American.
King. An American. I didn't say that because some of my best friends are from America, so I'd never say that. But on saying that, it has obviously caused a lot of problems, and it's just extraordinary how history has kind of repeated itself, and it's sad. It's also sad, but there is a lot again. Comparisons have been, as I mentioned today, and a lot of guests were saying it's extraordinary. They've been thinking the exact same thing. How isn't it amazing how history's repeat itself? And what I was finally going to say on that matter is that relationship never. Again, I'm looking at Richard to see if this is right or wrong, but I don't think that relationship ever seemed to heal. I think the only times we ever saw them together was I think there was a plaque unveiling for Queen Mary, King Edward VIII's mother, and then obviously there was the funeral of Edward VIII. Duke of Windsor. There was his funeral at Windsor where the royal family got together, and obviously the funeral of the Duchess of Windsor. And I think but that relationship never healed. And it saddens to think this could be what happens again.
Yes, just to mention, there was a very, very brief visit when the Duke was dying by the Queen to him in his Paris home. But yes, you're right, it was something that was never healed, certainly never healed so far as Queen Mary was concerned while she was alive, and certainly, and of course this is legendary, never, definitely not healed when it came to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who blamed Edward for the tremendous pressure. Of course, George V, as we know, but the Sixth was, as we know, was a heavy smoker. But the pressure put on someone who was shy, stammer. This is part of legend. To her, that was indeed one that wasn't healed. Regarding Richard Kay, I mean, I always, just to make one point that I've always felt, because we know that how close, and in fact, you mentioned it, Kinsey, how close Diana was to Richard Kay and fed him all sorts of material. It's extraordinary that Harry will never even consider that the Princess of Wales had this aspect where, there was an ambivalence, as there is with so many members of the royal family, with dealings with the press, because you need the coverage, you need it for doing good, and you also need it. I mean, no one was more brilliant, as you know, than Diana at reaching out and helping people. But there was another side. Harry has never admitted a single fault, as far as I know. So he does see a sort of tunnel vision. As regarding the dates, for years, I've always felt, it's almost felt that the Sussexes, which I don't think is probably the case, I just don't think they care. I think they do their own thing. I think there may have been occasions when William and Kate were in New York, and there was a trailer.
Wasn't it Boston? But wasn't it Boston? Maybe it was New York. Well, I wanted to ask you specifically, Richard, about the date. It was the king and queen were on an international trip, and Prince Harry, under the Kensington Palace umbrella, demanded that Kensington Palace release a statement to defend Meghan Markle when she was just his girlfriend. Do you remember when that happened? And it was a very important visit for King Charles, and it distracted from King Charles's visit when Prince Harry insisted that the palace release that statement that within the last 12 months has actually been removed from the royal website, that accusing the media of being racist, undertones in their coverage of Meghan Markle. But it was Jason Knopf approved it. Prince William approved it. But at the time, King Charles's team, Prince Charles at the time, they were disappointed that they had done it in this time frame, that the king was on a trip that they needed coverage for. It happened, I believe, in 2017, because I remember covering it in Sacramento. I remember covering it in Sacramento, California, and we weren't talking about the king's visit. We were talking about Prince Harry defending his girlfriend, and how rare that was, that Prince Harry in the palace had released the statement to defend his girlfriend. So I do think that you're both right, Grant and Richard, that it's never, while there is a well-oiled machine that functions to support everyone, and there is a calendar that everybody has access to, and things happen in sequence so that everybody's causes are elevated. I don't think Prince Harry ever had the memo or was ever fully engaged in that protocol. And maybe that's just because he didn't understand it, or it wasn't spelled out for him. Richard, go ahead and react to that.
Well, I think, yes, I think incidentally you were right, it was Boston, and it was, but it was a very, very important visit linked to the Earthshot Prize, as I remember, and the Netflix trailer dropped, and I remember just took a whole day of the visit out. I mean, I don't know that we can prove one way or the other whether the Sussexes are doing it deliberately, or whether they simply don't care, or whether they do their own thing deliberately and thus blanking out what else the other members of the royal family are up to. Because, I mean, this would be a prime example. I do have to say that it's very difficult. You know, having read Spare, which for me was one of the most ill-advised memoirs that has been conceived, and so desperately destructive as well, not to mention the 400 pages that never appeared in it. We haven't seen those, and I hope we won't. But there was one aspect of it that, and this links to Harry's recent court case, that does haunt me. You can't get away from it. He was in denial about his mother's death in quite a bit of that book. I mean, quite literally, the fact of it. It was haunting him. He needed treatment. They were taking drugs as a way to forget himself and so on. The military made him. I can see he's got a tunnel vision on this business of security. They had, and obviously they had automatic security when they were senior working royals. Now it's arranged on a case-by-case basis. But he has convinced himself, and I'm sure he believes it, that this is something King Charles could fix. And I think this, just to pick up Grant's point about the sadness of the fact that Harry didn't come a day earlier and they could have spent some time together, or some such arrangement could have been made, or might still be made. Of course, it might still be. And I agree with you about wanting some form of reconciliation at some future moment. You do need mutual trust, and there certainly isn't that. But I can see, when you're talking about REVEC, which is this committee of the Home Office, deciding that his security is X, and then his solicitor, his legal team, claiming that, in his opinion, that's inferior, and then he believes that. And I do think that his response to Diana's death is ongoing, and I think that's behind what he's planning with this particular move. I mean, it was ridiculous attempting to pay for security. You can't buy the police here. But he does genuinely believe, I think, that at the moment he doesn't think it's full. He will stay at a hotel, not Buckingham Palace, when he was over last September. That makes no sense to me. But it does seem to a lot of things, one thinks back to the problems that he experienced after Diana's death and his terror. You could get an Al-Qaeda, you could get a right-wing extremist, you could get a nutcase, and you could have problems. So I would hope that there was a way of drawing this to a satisfactory close for him.
Very good point. All right. Agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Grant Harrold, the Royal Butler. I apparently can party with you on cruise ships. Now that I know, I might have to make that investment. Former butler to King Charles III, royal commentator and PR extraordinaire Richard Fitzwilliams. Thank you so much for your excellent insight today. I enjoyed talking to you both immensely, and I look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.